Hi YouTube, my name's Sean Connors and this is Outsiders, and today we're going to be doing DM Tips number 9. This is probably one of the most important programs in the DM Tips series actually up to this point, because today's all about storytelling and creating adventures. I've got with me my own design diary, and I'm going to quickly try to cover off some points about the diary, how it works, and what I do and the reasons I do it the way I do it. The first thing to understand is my particular style of refereeing. Over a number of years I worked out that for me personally I use something called effectively a flowchart. Very simple bubbles and lines to reflect the story that I'm trying to build. And I found that for me personally to be one of the best ways of actually working out a story, looking at all the elements of the story and tailor-making the ideas I have towards the group of players that I have. And I think that's important because when you referee, some ways it's hard to use pre-made material because although you've got everything in front of you and that's lovely and cuts down all the preparation time, you still have to read it through and fully understand what the person who created the story is trying to do and the various elements and how it all fits together. That's not always as easy as writing your own stuff, strange enough, because at least you'll have thought it all the way through. So when you're coming to play the game, all the elements you've already thought through quite heavily. So if the players do deviate, again, it's easier to predict where the deviations will come. And that may sound complicated at the moment, but trust me, it isn't. So all I've got in front of me is my own design diary. So very simply, what I try to do is I will work out some basic rules about the campaign, any differences and changes that I want to do. I'll work out the various chapters, so in this case I've got particular chapters that I roughly think what level the characters will be. So first level is the first chapter, Life's Bizarre. What I hope is that by the time they reach the next part, which is Drakthar's Way, the characters will be roughly third level. So I'm actually story working out in advance the main story arc that I want to run. So that's quite important. No matter what the characters' stories are, and no matter what other stories come into play, I still need an overall theory or an arc that I want to use. And what I then do is I start working out some elements. These are just various parts about what I want to do with the story. So there's some examples in this where I come up with some ideas where some magic items were infected or infused. Hello. Come and join us if you wish. No? Okay. Do apologise. Yeah, so some very simple things where magic items became infected with a disease, so they'd slowly disappear, and that was called the Vanishing. So I had a whole piece on that. And there were a few bits as well where I wanted to link in this particular story about various kidnappings, and there were also a couple of other parts that interested me. So later on when I was doing some research for my games, I worked out that, for example here, there was, and this is what I always do when I'm writing, I get snippets of ideas like any writer will, and I'll write them down because I know at some point whether this campaign or another one I'm going to come back and use them. If I don't write them down I'm going to forget because I've got a mind like a sieve. So I found out that the word sarcophagus was Greek meaning flesh-eating, because Greek coffins were made of limestone which consumed the entire body, everything but the teeth, within 40 days. I never knew that. So I found that fascinating. I was working an idea or a story angle out, so I would suggest that you do that. No matter how small the diddle or doodle, write them down. And this really brings me to the next part of this, really, which is the actual overall story arcs and how they actually work. So in this particular case, what I have in front of us here is a very simple flowchart. I'm going to try and not use this one. I'm going to just think of a story right now and try and hope that by doing that, you can see the thought process. But what I do in each part is I literally bubble them and line off the potential possibilities of where I think the story can go. And what this does as well, it then helps you, as you reach each element, think, I need to be thinking about that combat, I need to be thinking about what that looks like, I need to be thinking about, do I need a map for this? What's the NPC called? What do they look like? How will I describe them? So it helps you tailor your stories into what you're trying to do. So that's the reason I'm showing those. So let me quickly go on a tangent. Let's see if we can think of something quite quickly. So here goes. Recently I was thinking about a story where I wanted to bring a new group of players together, and I was using the Warhammer 3rd edition system. So I wanted to make it as exciting as possible. So what I decided to do was have a beginning that meant the players jumped straight into the action. So I had an idea that they were travelling between two towns, two large cities, and there was a potential possibility of some work when they arrive at the next city. Try and invest some of the players characters' backgrounds into that travel. So if there's a particular reason why one of them may be a wizard's apprentice and needs to go and see someone within the city, great. But the essential part was to write a story that got them together as a group really quickly into the mechanics of the game. So I came up with an idea where they're travelling on the road. I knew they were going to be on foot. They didn't have the money for horses. They didn't have the money for coaches. They're on foot, and from behind suddenly they hear the approaching coach. So obviously you turn around, have a look, and suddenly you realise there's a coach coming towards you, out of control. So you imagine the scenario with this. So you've got a coach out of control, bubble, line. What are the possible options? A, the players might try to stop it. B, what else do they see? So it's out of control, little line going off. Hear women screaming voices from within. So they know there are some women on board. So the characters will try to probably stop it. What happens if they do stop it? Who's on board? So you can see all the time you're formulating little lines. And again, that helps you because it gives you direction. It makes you think about the people. And so in this case, let's follow it through a little bit. So there's two women on board. In this particular case, I wanted one of them to be a priestess of a peace-loving god called Shalua, who was a high priestess. And the other one was going to be a noble woman. Both of them were travelling together because they had a vested reason to, which I'll come to maybe later or talk about in a further storytelling part. But I knew that as soon as the coach was brought under control, that baggage from on top of the coach had been strewn further down the road, plus the driver had gone missing. Now naturally they'd ask the players to go and quickly check to see if the driver is okay, what happened, and also the noble woman would ask them to get her baggage back. So you can quickly see, very simply, how the little lines build off and begin to build a story. And the more you cover off, the more lines you actually cover off. You only really need 2 bits of A4. This particular bit that I did in here, and apologies if I start fumbling through to find it again, but there's number one there. This particular one here, you can see is an A4 piece of paper. And effectively what I've got here, after many years of play, I've been able to pretty much get it down to just a few lines, where that's potentially 2 or 3 sessions worth of information there. Now, of course I will follow this up with my own notes, other bits and pieces I think are important, etc., backstory parts, other parts of the sessions I will follow that up with. But essentially that's what I do. Suppose it's like storyboarding for a movie director. The idea is it's just a flowchart. What it does for you is massive because it allows you to build the story from a starting point and take it forward. In the case of this story, the characters quickly have 2 people they've saved, 2 people have a reason for travelling down the road, a vested reason to perhaps get this noble woman to a family, because of course there could be a reward in it for them, and so you're already on to the next part of the story. And that's where the high priest, etc. link in. So already I'm building these parts in, and no matter what the characters are currently doing. So I hope that you find that of some use. It's a story, it's basically a flowchart style of designing. It's certainly helped me. It's certainly helped me create different stories, and I'm sharing that with you. It's not something, I've never broken open the black books before. This is the first time that I've shared some of my techniques with people outside, because I think it's time that other people saw what each individual does. I'm sure other referees have other ways of doing it, but for me, I found this invaluable because very quickly it gives you a focus for your games and you a focus for the stories you wish to tell. Anyway, this has been Sean Connors. Actually, we'll rephrase that, shall we? This has been Outsiders. My name's Sean Connors. Until the next time, take care.